the dim candlelight of Greenwich Palace, the only sound is the frantic scratching of a quill. Elizabeth's hand trembles, the parchment mocking her with its permanence. Each stroke of ink feels like a drop of blood spilled. Miles away at Fotheringhay, the silence of the night is shattered by the rhythmic, violent thud of hammers. Coarse wood is hewn into a stage for death. As the Queen presses her royal seal into hot, red wax, a carpenter drives a final nail into the black draped platform. The contract is signed. The stage is set. The cousin's plea is silenced by the executioner's steel. To the Catholic world, Elizabeth was a bastard, the product of a forbidden union between Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. But Mary Stuart was different. She was the pure claimant, a queen by divine right and blood. While Elizabeth navigated the treacherous waters of a divided England, Mary's very existence acted as a magnet for rebellion. The rivalry wasn't born from malice, but from a terrifying mathematical reality. In a world that only allowed for one true son, Mary's radiant claim threatened to cast Elizabeth into a permanent, terminal shadow. The crown wasn't shared. It was contested territory. The heavens seemed to break over Scotland as Mary's world collapsed. Fleeing the smoke of rebellion and the betrayal of her own lords, she galloped toward the English border, her gown stained with the mud of a fallen kingdom. She looked back at the land that had rejected her and turned her eyes toward Elizabeth, believing a sister queen would surely offer an army to reclaim her throne. But as she crossed the Solway Firth, the warm welcome she imagined turned to cold stone. She arrived not as a guest, but as a dangerous contagion that Elizabeth could never let go. Locked in separate worlds, the two queens began a cold war fought with ink and shadow. From her gilded confinement, Mary's pens became her most dangerous weapons, smuggling out letters hidden in beer barrels and jewelry. Each message was a spark thrown toward the dry tinder of Catholic Europe, calling for a rescue that looked suspiciously like an invasion. Elizabeth watched from London, her eyes everywhere. She read the intercepted whispers, feeling the heat of Mary's ambition through the paper. It was a dance of polite greetings masking deadly intent, where every word was a coded promise of a crown or a grave. Elizabeth stood at the center of a storm, but she did not stand alone. Behind her stood the watchdog, Sir Francis Walsingham, and the tireless William Cecil, men who saw the world not through the lens of cousinly affection, but through the cold glass of national security. To them, Mary was not a guest. She was a ticking clock. While Elizabeth hesitated, moved by the sacred nature of royalty, her advisors built a wall of steel and secrets around her. They transformed England into the world's first surveillance state, convinced that for the Virgin Queen to live, the Scottish Queen had to die. 19 years is a lifetime when measured in stone and shadow. Mary's world shrank from the rolling hills of Scotland to a revolving door of damp English manners. The vibrant, horse-riding Queen of the North was replaced by a woman whose joints ached with rheumatiz and whose hair turned prematurely gray under her wigs. Every window was a reminder of what she had lost. Every guard's footstep a reminder of her powerlessness. As the seasons blurred into a singular, gray ache, her pleas for a face-to-face meeting with Elizabeth were met with silence. Desperation began to poison her hope, turning a queen into a conspirator. Walsingham knew that to kill a queen, he needed more than suspicion. He needed a confession. He allowed Mary a glimmer of false hope, letting her believe her secret, beer barrel correspondence was secure. In reality, every letter passed through the hands of his expert cryptographers. When the Babington plot emerged, a plan to assassinate Elizabeth and crown Mary, the trap was sprung. Mary, desperate for freedom, put pen to paper and endorsed the murder of her cousin. In that moment, the ink became a death warrant. Walsingham finally had the bloody proof he needed to force Elizabeth's hand. In the great hall of Fotheringhay, the unthinkable became reality. A sovereign queen, who believed she answered only to God, was forced to stand before a commission of English lords. Mary entered the room with the dignity of a martyr, protesting that no court had the right to judge an anointed monarch. Yet, the evidence was undeniable. As the intercepted letters were read aloud, the room grew cold with the weight of treason. Mary's defense was a desperate cry of, "I am a queen," but the law of the land had finally superseded the divinity of the bloodline. The verdict was inevitable: guilty. The halls of Greenwich became a haunting ground for Elizabeth's conscience. She paced the galleries at night, muttering, "Odd fur, odd fairy, either suffer or strike." Signing the warrant meant more than killing a cousin. It meant shattering the very illusion of royal invincibility. If she could execute Mary, what was to stop her own subjects from one day turning on her? She screamed at her ministers, accused them of bloodlust, and wept in private over the impossible choice. Finally, in a fit of panicked resolution, she scrawled her name. But even as the ink dried, she begged her secretaries to keep it a secret, a desperate, futile attempt to remain innocent of the inevitable. Mary stepped onto the black-clothed scaffold, a figure of striking defiance. Stripping away her somber outer garments, she revealed a bodice and petticoat of brilliant, sacrificial red, the liturgical color of martyrdom. With a prayer for Elizabeth's soul on her lips, she laid her neck upon the block. It took 3 strikes of the axe to finish the deed. When the executioner lifted her head, shouting, "God save the Queen," the threat that had haunted England for decades died with her. Elizabeth was now the undisputed sun of the English sky, her golden age cemented in the blood of her close